Hey guys, Chief Fruity here. This is the behind the scenes of Pure Glory, and in this video I'm going to show you guys the sound design and stuff I did in order to make this song. So let's get into it. So first off, I'm going to say that the tempo is 140 BPM, and this is a good tempo for dubstep. It works out pretty well, so I use this for most of the songs here in Wreckage. And then getting into it, the first thing I have here is the ARP, so I'm going to go through this. Okay, it sounds like the filter, something's off. So this synth I made inside of a Harmor, and I used 9 voices of unison. So it sounds like this when it's stretched out as opposed to this. And then I used some harmonizers in here, and the harmonizers like really got it to come out. So if the harmonizers are gone, it's like this. As well as I took down the filter a little bit, because when the filter's up like this, you can kind of hear there's like all this noise up here in this spectrum. So I took some of that out by lowering the frequency. So it sounds like that as opposed to having all that noise up there. So that's what I did inside of the Harmor. I didn't put any effects on in here. Most of the time I do like to put them on in the mixer instead. So I put a Vocodex onto that lead. So without the Vocodex on there, it sounds like this, which in the pattern is like this. And then with the Vocodex, without the Vocodex. So what it's vocoding is this boosting the band values all the way to 100%, from default to 100, and then it's onto the female vocal type. And I put the band gain multiplier all the way down to negative 100%, and this is the negative polarity here. And then I have the full wetness up, wetness to 100%, and SG to 100%, just to really boost this out. It really helped to like make it come out, because this is as you heard without the vocoder, it's like that, and then with it, so it boosts the volume a lot. And then because of that, I did have to turn it down. But giving that vocoder did help, as well as I did boost some lows here in the sub and bass spectrum, which I know there's barely anything going on there. So if I were to disable this, it sounds like this, and then with it, so there's basically no change because there's not much going on here. Most of where the lows are is here in the low mid, around 300 hertz is about the lows. But here over around 100 hertz down to 0. It's like there's very little, but I still wanted to boost that just to give it a little bit more atmosphere. So that's why it's boosted so much, because there's not much going on there. And I put on a reverb here to give it a little bit of wetness to kind of open it up a little bit so it's not so flat. So that's what I have for the ARP there, and then this is the volume of the ARP fading it in. And then here I have a sub bass, which isn't too complicated. It's just a sine wave at low frequencies. And I made this in a citrus. I just dropped a pitch down and then just played it at a lower note. And for the sub bass, I have an EQ here boosting a little bit of lows. And then a tip for the sub basses is what I would have done now, but I didn't do this then because this is a trick I've recently learned, would actually be to turn the sub bass down and turn it up with using lows instead of volume. Because what that gives it is you don't hear it very much, but you can feel it. So if you're running a bass boost, it would really come up, but then if you're not running a bass boost, then it wouldn't even mess with anything. So it's basically would be there for if people want to hear it, and it wouldn't be there for those who don't want to hear it. So that's what I would do now, but this is still a perfectly okay way of running sub bass. And then here, I have this lead. So I'll play this for you. And this is made inside of a Harmor. This is the string section by Nuclean down here. So I didn't do a whole lot to change this synth. The phaser is on, the frequency is down a little bit, is down quite a bit here, because when it's on all the way, it's having the same problem as the ARP, is there's all these high frequencies up here. So with running the filter down, then it sounds more natural. And there's unison going on it, some harmonizer width, which really wouldn't be doing anything because the amount isn't even on. The pitch phase, the unison phase is up a little bit, and then the pitch is tiny bit, the pan's all the way down. These just mess with how the unison sounds, as well as this is the type of unison you have, and it is on random. And there's some vibrato, which, so it doesn't sound all straight, it sounds much more natural with that, as well as some reverb, there's some delay on there, and volume. And then I put all the X, Y's, and Z's all the way up to 100%, so the harmonic blur, the phaser amount, and the vibrato amount are all the way up. So I turn those all the way down, all the way up, because it sounds much better like that, in my opinion. And then I put that onto 16, where I just had a reverb on here. And the reverb worked out pretty well. So, yeah. So that was this first lead here. And then here I have a second lead that I joined in. And this was made inside of a harmor. Octave lower. So this is a similar sound. So what I did here is I boosted up the unison all the way up. I didn't mess with any of this pitch, phase, pan, or blurring it, although it's blurred by default. But I boosted up to 9 voices, and I put all the harmonizers on. And then that's really all I did in here. It's not too complicated, just, the unison, harmonizers, and then this volume envelope, which is running it like this by default. So I didn't make any changes to this. So that's really pretty simple what's going on in here. And I put this onto track 17, where I have an EQ here, boosting some bass and some mids. So this is the EQ spectrum. As you can tell, still the harmonizers are really coming through. And I boosted these sections so without this EQ, it would sound like this. And with the EQ, it sounds like this. And then I added on a reverb. Without the reverb, it's like this. And with it, so it just sounds more open with the reverb here. And then with the EQ, it just sounds a little bit more natural because of the mid highs and the low mids are boosted. So that's what's going on in the intro. The intro is pretty simple. There's not too much stuff going on. I have some noise here, which is, I made it inside of a GMS with the noise going all the way up here, and I use this filter cutoff down here. Look at the noise. And on track 18, I didn't put any effects onto it, but a good tip for noise would actually be to boost the highs, something like this. So it sounds like this. Instead of like this. It just sounds a little bit better like that. Though I didn't do that for this song. And then I added in the drums here. So this is what it's playing. So the kick, I have the kick put onto track 3, and on track 3 I turned up the kick all the way, playing a low octave there. So there's the kick there, and then I have the snare here, which I put on track 5, where I put on some reverb here. Just a tiny bit of reverb, because for this song I didn't want this to have too much reverb. Just enough to get it to carry out a little bit so it's not dry like this. That's it without the reverb, and then with the reverb. It opens it up a lot more. But I didn't want it to be too opened where it would sound like it's in the other room, kind of thing. So here I have a hi-hat. Pretty simple hi-hat onto track 8. I didn't really do anything there. I just kept the volume the same. Because the hi-hats, you don't want them to be too loud or too quiet. Kind of just right in the middle there. And another tip for the hi-hats that I've been doing recently on the songs I'm working on is I'm actually taking out the lows completely. So it sounds like this, as opposed to this. it just sounds a little bit lighter and more like a cymbal rather than like a mass that's filling everything up. So yeah, that's basically what's going on here. So far it hasn't gotten too complicated, just these little patterns and not too much heavy sound design yet, still pretty simple. And then I go to this little this breakdown thing here, where I start fading in this bass from the drop. So I'll show you how I did this. So this is playing the pattern from the ARP, though it is playing it on 3 octaves at once. And that really fills it up to play 3 octaves at once. It really, it harmonizes the sound a lot more. So this is what it is playing on. So I have the harmonizer all the way up, while keeping the width and the stir the same. Otherwise it's like this. And I have the unison in 9 voices. And I have the pitch all the way down here just because I wanted to get it an octave lower, and the pitch is all the way down as well as up here. So that got it down an octave down. And then I have the phasers down. I was messing around with the prism amount here. But I did not end up using that because it did sound kind of weird. But messing with the prism with some envelopes is a good thing to do for some basses. I did that in Outcasts. You can check that video if you want to see that. So that was what I was doing here. So that was on to track 2, where I put it onto this bass here, and I ran it through a Vocodex. So this is really what widened this synth. So without the Vocodex, it sounds like this. And with the Vocodex, sounds like this. So it really did widen it out a lot. I turned up the SG and the wetness, and the band values, the band gain multiplier, gender type to female, and the harmonizers to 2 people. And I put on some real, which kind of gave it some reverb, which worked with this reverb to get it to sound pretty wide. Without the reverb, it's like this. And with the reverb. And I have a multi-band compressor on here. And as you can tell, no, you can't pause this, but it is getting very loud. That's the signal coming in, and it compressed it by basically 50%. So the pink is the signal coming in, the purple is the signal coming out. So that compressed it a lot, because with this Vocodex on here, it really got it to be super loud. And so I wanted to keep the same power and feel of it being super powerful, but then I just compressed it so it's not super loud. So that's what I have there, and then it's just fading in with this filter 1 frequency envelope, which would just be this right here. It actually could work as a pretty good wobble bass, but people don't really use wobble basses much anymore. And then I added in a clap here, and with this clap I actually playing it on 3 different notes at once. I didn't match any specific notes, I just did 3 kind of almost random, because I didn't want to play a chord or anything that sounded in harmony, because that would I thought that would sound kind of weird. So like if I did play a chord, like C, C, like this, move those up like this, that just sounds a little too much in tune. And it just sounded kind of weird, so I didn't want it to be in tune. So even if it's like this lower pitch like this, it just sounds too much in tune, and that, like, when people are clapping, they're not really clapping in tune. So I didn't want to give it that feel, so I just, what notes did I play here? See, I played it C, D sharp, and a G. And it gave it a good realistic feel. And I put these claps onto here on track 11, where I didn't do anything, I just mapped them to the track. And then I have this ARP filter frequency that is decreasing the ARP filter to fade it out for this little breakdown here. And then when I rise it into the drop, I have the leads fading in with volume and the noise fading in with this filter. and I have this kicks coming up really quickly, and the bass is fading in. And I have a reversed cymbal to kind of do this effect, you know, like it's sucking it in. And then I have a snare here and this little ARP thing. So let me solo this track with a snare. And I have this going that time. The reason I had this going here instead of just leaving it silent is I didn't want it to just be blank. I wanted to have something to kind of fill it up a little bit. Just so it's not like a void of empty space there. Just something to kind of fill it in. And then here in the drop I have decreasing noise to bring it down. I have the drum loop here. I'll play this for you. So that's the drum loop I have going through the drop. And then I have this FM synth here. This FM synth I was able to make inside of a Citrus, and this was down at a really low octave. Right? So this FM synth it's not too complicated of an FM bass here. Running triangle waves except for these two rectangle waves towards the end, and then their pitch frequency is going from 2 to 32 to 64. And then because it's doing that, as it goes across the spectrum, from here it would be in the 2 range to about here to here, its frequency would be 2, and then in this middle range it would be 32, and about up here it would be 64. So because it's doing that, it sounds really vocally because its pitch is going up and it's switching to the square waves. I mean the rectangle waves. The square waves are this. That's a square wave. That's a rectangle wave. As well as the amounts that they're going up is less in the matrix here, because if you go up at a really high pitch, if this 6 here was a higher amount, it would be really loud. So if I turn these up even more, like normal amounts, it would sound like this. So it sounds really high because these should be going through less, because it's such a high pitch, it really messes everything off, everything up. So there we are back now. And then on the EQ here, I did turn up the lows a tiny bit right there. Just very slight, just a little bit there. I have the volume up a little bit more there. And that's really all it's doing inside of the Citrus. I didn't use the effects tab just because the Citrus effects just seem kind of like they work, but it's just easier to just put it on like track 20 and add something. And in that case, I added a Vocodex on here, which is pretty much the same Vocodex I've been using for most of the song, except it's on the male type. I mean, yeah, the male type instead of the female type. So that's what I have here. The reel and everything else is the same. Just I copied the same Vocodex and just turned it down to male. So it sounds like this instead of this. So it just kind of takes off some high frequencies. Basically what it's doing is it would be, where's an EQ? Oh, not that EQ, I want the second one, the newer one, like this. So it'd basically be taking the high frequencies from here, cutting them off and adding them down here. That's really what changing the vocal type does. So it's not too complicated. Like you could just make the changes in the EQ, but inside the vocoder it changes the vocoder, so like the band values would be different. So doing it in the vocoder does have that advantage here. It even shows you the EQ spectrum down here with the low bass, low mid, mid, upper mid, the pass, and the tremble here. So that's what that's doing. And then this EQ I loaded up here before. This is actually not triggered. Though you may not be able to see it because I'm covering up the section where all the plugins are, but this was something I was experimenting with, though it's not activated. So that's that synth, and then I already showed you this synth up here in the rise. So that's really all the drop is just this. And then I did go to a drop B here, where I did put it into double time, where I just made some variations to all the dubstep stuff. And then I did go to a pretty heavy breakdown right here. And then for this section, when it does this growl, it's the same bass, and then all I'm doing inside is it's getting really glitchy, where I have it go from A down to E, and then it's glitching from E to F with all these 30-second notes. And these notes are not on time. As you can see, this note is from down here. Here it's playing at the beginning of the 30-second note. Here it's playing off time, and it's playing off time here. So these would be like upbeats if you're going really deep and down to the notes. And then that combined with this automation makes what it sounds like. So I did that with the breakdown as well as in this bass. I did slow this down a little bit, like this, with playing like a third of a triplet, because this is a triplet, but it's not standalone because it's playing in between them, but a triplet would include 3, but I'm only using 1 and an 8th note. So it's an 8th note and then a triplet and an 8th note and a triplet, just playing right next to each other. So that's what I did for in here. And I do have this little outro from the drop. And then I'll show you guys the verse. Here in the verse, I did add in these plucks here, which are more kind of like stabs. That's what I would refer to them as. But it's playing 3 different octaves here. This I made inside of a harmor, a little bit higher octave. So I put the harmonizers all the way up, the amount, the width, and the stir, to really get that in tune with the harmonies. I have the unison up to 9 voices, and then I have this volume envelope here. And then it has this resonance time at the end because the volume goes down to here, and then once you stop playing the note, it'll switch it down to here. So I can drag out the note for as long as I want, and then it'll play through this whole thing and stay like that. And then once you let go of the note, then it'll end and play that. And then I put this onto track 15, where I put on some reverb. And then I have the ARP in here. I have a sub bass playing the same thing. And it sounds super distorted because it's really low. Unless you have a super good speaker, then it would sound pretty good. And then I have this lead here, which is playing... This is what it was playing from the beginning, though instead of having these notes, 16th notes, they're 8th notes instead, except for right here. And they're not dotted notes anymore, they are whole notes now. So it fills up the whole spectrum, and I copied it up so it's playing 3 octaves at once. And I have this playing in here as well. I did not put this onto 3 octaves because I just wanted this to be kind of background, not like center. So I just had 1 octave there, and I have some noise going through the song. The drum loop is pretty much the same. I'll play through that really quick. And then I have this one growl in here in the beginning of the second half of the verse. And I just put that there just to kind of add in some more atmosphere on the first part of the second verse. Though I didn't want it to kind of fill up everything, but just that little part there. As well as it's also here in the beginning. And then that's the verse, and then it goes back to this little breakdown and rise here. And then to the second drop, I do make some little changes here. So what I did here was, in the note, this bass is actually playing a minor. It starts from playing E to a D sharp. And I didn't want to go down to D just because that would sound too much in tune. I wanted it to be minor there. So I played that D sharp, or E minor, whichever you like to prefer it, or call it. And then for this bass here, for the second bass, that's really filling in all the gaps here. It's still playing 3 octaves. I'm going to take this off so I can play the whole thing. And I just changed some of the notes around. So this third note here, in the whole spectrum, I boosted it up. Originally it would have been about here, but I boosted it up here. And this is from the octave below it. So this is the only note I changed. So that's what I did for the second drop, and then the double time section and the breakdown sound very similar. Well, the double time section is the same. The breakdown, I don't think I made any changes. Yeah, I kept the breakdown the same, and the verse is the same as well. So I didn't have any progression in the verse, I just had some in this first section of the drop here. And then it goes down to the outro, where I slowly fade out all the audio tracks, just like I did in the beginning here. So that was the behind the scenes of Pure Glory. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more videos. I post here every Friday on music videos like this for FL Studio tutorials and stuff. Sometimes I do Launchpad videos, and I'm making a Marshmallow style track from song and a Marshmallow style track from scratch while recording the whole time I do it. So I'll be showing you guys how I do that. In next week's video, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I might do a Marshmallow style track, or I might do something else. I'd love to hear you guys' suggestions on what you'd like to see on this channel. So be sure to comment that down below, subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in next week's video. Until then, bye.